Introducing the next level of 7th seal codes.
And thank you for joining me. This is going to be very exciting. I've planned this for quite a while, and I'm sure you're going to find it extremely informative. So we're going to be taking a look at the foundation of the Saint Germain codes. I have spoken before about the opening of the 7th seal. Revelations talks about the book with 7 seals, and that it would not be opened until the end times. And it also talked about that it couldn't be opened but by a certain individual, which we'll get more into later. So there's many references in the Bible that talk about things being hidden and then being ultimately revealed. Here's a few examples. In essence, there's nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known.
I have referenced the sign of the times that the Son of Man shall come
on clouds, which I've shown to be the representation of the constellation of Orion. Every aspect of my work is underlying that a greater story was understood as a model to ascend. And here we see further evidence that this was known. On the right, in silver, we see a woman standing in a gate next to an Asherah pole. On the left side, we have a man that could represent Orion. But more significantly, we have a baby down in the bottom pointing up at the gate. A phrase from the Bible comes to mind: "Be as innocent as doves and wise as serpents," as well as other references in the Gnostic scriptures that state, "Be as innocent as babes, and then you shall enter the kingdom of heaven." On the left, overall, we see a clock with letters inside and a trumpet that represents the hands of the clock, and they are in the position that is nearly 5:22 and 11:22, along with another bar from 10 to 4 o'clock, which represents the zodiac cross, all of which are markers that tell the story of the solstice and equinox, and the most significant silver gate and golden gate as the time to optimize the alignment to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. I find it amazing that these clues that highlight these codes and greater understandings have been depicted in a variety of ways. Throughout this series, we will see a number that emphasize the greater aspects of this story. We know keys to wisdom have been left behind, pictures with values that detail an understanding, correlations to this system that are obvious. My intuition and inner knowing knew that there was a greater understanding of these things that I've been bringing through, and I wanted to find evidence that conclusively demonstrated that as fact. We've seen how the frequency table self-organizes. It's almost as if it's self-aware to align everything into a 999 type formula. In fact, every major holy key code that is a 3-digit number that comes back to 9, part of a tree of wisdom. We are expanding this throughout these videos. At the time of Sir Francis Bacon, they didn't have electricity, so they didn't have a great deal of knowledge around frequency, like the frequency table that creates the Enad, the 9-pointed star, that assembles the understanding of the table. But you could figure out that the numbers want to be organized, such as we are looking at in the tetrahedron with the red, white, and blue. Diagonally from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock, we can see 9. 4 plus 5 is 9. The 495. So when you understand that everything comes back to 9, you could discover all of this. But it's likely that the ancient Egyptians knew all this and put it to practice, and that it was passed down. So I'm tracing down what we can figure out, what we can find, and demonstrate what was known. And if it was known, as I believe it was, how would you preserve this wisdom? Where could you hide it that it wouldn't be lost, discovered, or misused? Hiding it in plain sight seems like the best choice. Crypting it into the English language. Thanks for undertaking this journey with me. It's very exciting because obviously I know where this goes and I'm already seeing how it ends. Much has been already said about Sir Francis Bacon in previous videos. Here we are going to dive deeper into evidence of what he knew by the fact that he hid profound symbolism in his cover art, much like the clues he put in the headpiece of the King James Version Bible. We see signs that he knew much more. The book here is depicting the basic tenets of the mystery school, which we will highlight further as we proceed. It is also most significant to understand that a chapter within this book, which is called the Advancement of Learning, there is a method for decrypting layers of cryptography that was placed in not only the Shakespeare sonnets and plays, but the books that Sir Francis wrote. So within this chapter, he teaches you how to find the messages he left behind. The first communication states, "If I'm dead, don't go any further because this could get me killed." He proceeds to reveal that his mother was the Queen of England. Elizabeth was the virtuous virgin who did not have sex, who had no children. He tells the tale of how he was denied his rightful heir to the throne, and much, much more. Our focus is on the 5 layers of cryptography, and the 5th being numbers. You will be astonished to discover what he knew, whether he was taught it or accessed it from his higher states of consciousness, bleed-throughs, braiding, or simply a more divine state of consciousness where he understood the secrets of old as his own. For Saint Germain, who was Thoth, was Sir Francis Bacon before he faked his death and became the Count. Much of this esoteric understanding was put in the Rosicrucian order as well as the Freemasons. I've used the analogy of building a temple, constructing a structure that ascends to a capstone, as the metaphor for laying the bricks of the knowledge that erects divine consciousness. Something similar is depicted on the cover of the books that we're seeing here, with the twin pillars as paramount as the entrance to the temple. King Solomon's temple had 2 pillars out front, Boaz and Yakin, one copper and brass. It's important to have this understanding as we go forward so you can see the analogies. The pillars in general are very important because they also have a connotation of wisdom, strength, and beauty. These also correlate to the 3 pillars relevant to the tree of life, even though they go by slightly different names. They have relatively the same characteristics. The original Freemason imagery incorporated isocephia, which we've seen before, to mean hidden numbers and sacred geometry in pictures, which is an ancient thing the Egyptians used. And I find it very telling that the number of steps depicted on the path to enlightenment are 3, 5, and 7, which are ultimately 7 and 8, which we've seen are significant because of the message behind the Merkaba, the two becoming one. It's also very fascinating to realize that the Masons who built the Gothic churches incorporated this very same two-tower symbolism, the entering of the temple, and the preservation of the Masonic symbols. And now for decoding the first Shakespeare folio. Let's dig deeper into the cover page. What is revealed is really incredible. Alright, let's dig into some of the layers. There's been a variety of people that have worked on decryption. We're going to take a look at a few, and then I will get into what I've found. There are two versions of Shakespeare folios. We will be analyzing the cover page of both. It is significant to note that what is engraved, as it were, in our minds as we comprehend what is stated here, it becomes clear it is a bit of a riddle. I'll read it for you. It says, "To the reader, this figure that thou here seest put, it was for gentle Shakespeare cut, wherein the engraver," it says graver, but it means engraver, "had a strife with nature to outdo the life. O could he but have drawn his wit as well in brass as he hath hit," which is hid, "his face, the print would then surpass all that was ever writ in brass. But since he cannot, reader, look not on his picture, but his book." It's really very telling, for it is indicating that he has hid his face, and what we'll find is many ways that the author has revealed who he is without revealing his name or face. There are those that have felt that they've uncovered Pi hidden in the first page, and to reveal this one must start analyzing line by line, character by character, to begin to decode as one manner of analyzing this multifaceted gem. So let's take a look at how the structure of the words and sentences resembles squaring the circle, so to speak. This chart reveals the breakdown of the number of words with some groupings that reveal 22, with some further analysis that has words in uppercase to reveal 3.14, and a grouping by 7. 7 divided by 22 is 3.14, as well as 34 words on each offsetting of lines for a squared type picture. This is interesting, but I think you're going to find what I have to be much more fascinating. It's also compelling to realize that here we see the numbers 1 through 9 without grouping them by the 3 or 4 or 5 letter sets, equal 3, 1, 4, or 4, 1, 3. So in other words, in a straight count, 1, 2, 3, first set, 4, 5, 6, second set is 1, 7, 8, 9, third set is a 3. The total of the white squares representing the number of words was 287. Can't quite see that. But I was more interested in what's the breakdown. So the value of the single digits, of course maintaining the master number 11, comes to 71 or 17. For those of you who watched some of my other videos, you'll remember that 17 is very significant. And again, we will, of course, always emphasize the meaning and the value with a type of recall, in case you've forgotten. But first, let's build this up a little bit. There may be more than one way to look at this, and what can be revealed will depend upon whether or not we're using the proper cipher. There are several that are known. With an understanding of all the codes, we can glean what additional values may have been known or used, as you shall see. Starting from a simple cipher, of course, they did not have the letter J, so without the letter J, Bacon added up to 33. He probably thought that was pretty profound, given what he would have understood about the tree of life and the 22 paths and 11 Sephiroth, with the one hidden one. This would be why he created the Freemasons to have 33rd degree initiations. It's also pretty profound to realize that the K cipher, Bacon adds up to 92 or 11. And in the Germain Gematria, Francis Bacon adds up to 630 or 360, which is really significant given the degrees of a compass. We shall see how profound that really is as we proceed. Even more compelling is the famous phrase, "Sweet Swan of Avon is 1212 or 1122. And of course, Bacon in simple cipher or modern English cipher, 3, 5, 8, and 17. It's important to bear these in mind. And of course, Francis Bacon in what I also call the 369 cipher or the Germain Gematria is 105 or 15.6, which is our Merkaba code. Okay, now with those understandings, take a look at this. The outside capitals, you can see the value of TWO and H and B. I have them flipped. It doesn't really matter. We're just doing math on them. So in the first column in dark orange is modern. The reason we're looking at modern is because even though they didn't have the J at the time of this, it's highly likely that because I and J was often used both for a while, that they had a cipher for modern already. And I'll show other examples that evince this. And then K is 116 in a vertical total or a larger value, and then when we take it and break it all down, we end up with 8 and 8 for 16. And then carrying the one from up at the top with T, it's 17. Which is pretty profound because God also adds up to 17. We're going to see a lot of ways that 17 comes out further. It's also significant that the initials BI are 29 or 11, and we also saw that Bacon in K was also 29 or 92. Same numbers can be inverted, mirrored, inside out, same value, same frequency. The first folios were released right about 1609, and so here we can see for sure that J had not been printed yet, used yet, even though it was a contemplation that didn't make it into print until 1633. I'm going to show you how and why it was added when the 369 cipher was created. With the J added, it's interesting to note that TT, which was N1 as a 19, reducing to 1, is bumped up to a 2. TT is the initials that are signed much like the BI in other versions. Okay, it's going to start getting real interesting now because these codes are going to start to become more and more familiar and able to be identified according to the overarching story that I've been describing all along. a few more numbers that come out from the various ciphers. There are two sets of columns, one for the simple and one for the K, focusing in on the 67. The first name Francis adds up to 13 by virtue of reducing the 67. Again, we learned that any 13 could potentially be a 22, or it's a hidden higher octave of 13. And in the K, it's 171, which is 11/7. The knowledge of master numbers and three-digit numbers is pretty clear, given what we see here. Francis signed his name, or Fra Baconi produced the value of 222, and Bacon in K was 111, which becomes very paramount throughout this material, as we've already seen in a variety of ways, and yet to come in even more profound ways. Okay, let's take a deeper look. Another aspect, you see the header, it has the center section darkened. Within that is two A's, and those A's are one dark and one light, one more black and one more white. A also being 1. So what we see here is a correlation to the B and the I, which is 11. And this further corresponds to the Gemini twins and Janus, who is the leader of the Roman pantheon of gods, gatekeeper of the mysteries, guardian of the gates of heaven, who presides over beginnings, transitions, and endings, whose two opposing faces can look into the past and the future, the within and the without, and whose mysteries is represented by the double A emblem. Ho ho! This ties to our story about the Silver Gate, the cusp, the Orion, the pathway to ascension that I've been outlining in a variety of ways. Here we're looking at the origin of the twin story. Pictured on the left is Castor and Pollux, the Roman Gemini twins, who are said to be opposites in a variety of ways. Some stories has one of the brothers mortal and the other immortal. In mythology, it is Jupiter or Zeus who takes the form or shape of a swan and impregnates Leda. The mythology of the Geminis is very rich in that twin stories are highlighted in most of the indigenous belief systems around the planet. There are some most notable ones, such as Set and Osiris. And of course, it's not often known that Mercury and Venus are divine twins, as well as what's at the core of our story with the Silver Gate and the Golden Gate and their corresponding characters. Osiris at the Silver Gate and Ophiuchus is very profound because he's also known as Serpentarius, the serpent bearer or the guardian of the hidden wisdom. In fact, this entire region is ripe with stories that point to the Golden Gate. We will highlight more of that later as we proceed to unravel the Gospel in the Stars, which tells the stories of the descent of the gods and the return to divine consciousness. It is interesting to understand that morning star is a positive thing, for both Mercury and Venus are morning stars, even though Venus is sometimes an evening star. For example, Mercury is only seen for about 15 minutes on the horizon in the morning. It actually represents hidden wisdom because of this. and all the stories about Mercury being the god of wisdom. The 13th sign is on the same elliptical as the other signs of the zodiac and is a morning star constellation. The Freemasons said, "Become a morning star," as a title, the same way in Revelations it states in 2:28, "I will also give him the morning star." And further in Revelations 22:16, "I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star." There are others that suggest that this is a great thing to accomplish or become, which is one of the reasons that we have 13 as a number for perfection. You can see the significance of 13 all over the place here. And this is mentioned because of what's going to unfold in the upcoming explanations. It is very significant to realize that not only the Bible but the Gnostic scriptures says that Jesus was a twin. In John 11:15, Thomas was called the twin. His name was actually Judas, and he was given a spiritual name of Thomas and Didymus, which both mean twin. Thomas in Aramaic and Didymus in Greek. And in the Gnostic scriptures it states that Thomas was the contender. And Jesus addresses him saying, "Brother Thomas, now since it has been said that you are my twin and true companion, examine yourself." Metaphysically, Jesus and Saint Germain are twin brothers. One represents the mind and the other the heart. It has been said that the torch has been passed from Jesus to Saint Germain, who is stewarding our freedom. There are various things that suggest that Francis Bacon knew about all this, or a great deal of it anyway, and was on a mission to discover the divine bloodline and deeper hidden wisdom around this entire subject. Throughout this series, I'm going to illustrate that he not only understood this very thoroughly, but discovered many things. Before we take a look at the second cover folio, let us examine a little bit further the symbolism around the Rosicrucian order and some of the numbers that correlate to the names relevant to the 369 Gematria. Here we see depicted the cross, the rose, the compass, and a pelican that is feeding its young. This type of symbolism was on the headpiece that Francis put together for the King James Version Bible, which has some interesting esoteric meanings. Let's take a look at some of them now. The symbolism of the swan is important because it's not only a symbol of grace and beauty, but it's also associated with love, music, and poetry. And in Roman mythology, swan was sacred to Venus, the goddess of love. Did you know that the swan is also a symbolism of motherhood? They are also symbolic of love, devotion, and partnership, and thus the sacrifice symbolism with the mother picking off part of her breast and feeding it to the young. Further, it's symbolic of harmony between cosmic forces. Gold representing the sun, silver symbolic of the moon. Additionally, the swan was seen as traditional symbol of beauty and grace in ancient Greece and was sacred to Aphrodite, Venus. The swan was also sacred to Apollo. In Greek mythology, the people believed that the swan sang a sweet song when people died. The symbolism of the rose is very important as well. While it's a symbol for the goddesses, it was also hung in banquets so that anything said under it could not be repeated, as well as secret chambers. It represented confidentiality and secrecy. It further represented the blood of Christ, as well as became the flower for the Virgin Mother Mary, as well as the flower for Venus. It's interesting to see the correlation of the numbers associated with the words rose, swan, moon, and sun are all 342 or 324, which has a correlation to the frequency 432. The number 756 will also show up in a variety of unique ways as we proceed. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at the next folio. And now for the second cover page, beginning with the hyphenated Shakespeare's sonnet, 3 S's, which is 111. We have 7 lines, so if we take 7 times 111, we get 777. And if you take 777 times the date of 1609, dropping the 0, so 169 times 777, it equals 13, 13, 13. 3 sets of 13s, 13 times 3 is 39. That correlates to what it says on the right, on the first page of the scene. The name Francis appears a total of 39 times, i.e. 17 times as a stage prompt and 22 times as a spoken word. This is no coincidence, as 17 corresponds to the name Bacon, as we've seen, and the number 22 always refers to Bacon's birthday, January 22nd. William Shakespeare is believed to be a made-up name. It's 14 characters long. Its value is 24, or rather the last name's value at 24, just like Tudor. There's 24 letters on the line with that name. A little further analysis, the 39 represents the number of characters above the line, emphasizes the number of characters above the line as 39, and the number of characters below the second line as 49. Those two numbers combined together is 88, as we shall see plays a role. The values on the right all reduce to 11, which we've seen be significant of the twin pillars and Gemini. Here we see the other side of the page, which reads, "To the only begetter of these ensuing sonnets, Mr. W.H., all happiness and that eternity promised by our ever-living poet. Witness the well-wishing adventurer in setting forth." It is interestingly arranged across 13 lines. There's 13 again. The initials WH add up in the K cipher to the number 55. The number 55 corresponds in Pythagorean or simple cipher to the name Hiram Abiff, which is Bacon's mythical founder of the Freemasons, which is essentially himself. Therefore, WH is code for Hiram Abiff. Furthermore, the number 154, the total number of sonnets, also simplifies to 55. The worshipful Hiram 88 will become clear here shortly and play into everything. Yet the total number of letters on the cover page corresponds precisely to the name, as well as the fact that the 14 letters that make up the phrase worshipful Hiram is a derivation of 49. 7 times 7, 7 plus 7, etc. In the reverse cipher, Hiram Abiff adds up to 176, which we will see is an extremely important secret key from the Magi code, which we'll learn about in one of the next episodes. Moving right along, when we look at the 12 lines and add up the value of the letters, for example, bi is 2 on the 6th line, the total value is 143, which is one of our sacred numbers from the pillar tree, which shows that Bacon understood what we're driving at here. Let's see if there's any other correlations. When we add the value of the 13th line with the old English without the J, it's 145. But with the T's being 2's, it's 147, which is 1/2 of the Merkaba, 147258. So I thought, if this is true, why wouldn't you express the whole thing, right? The above and below, the left and the right, where's the 258? When you look at the emphasized sevens, the words that are set out with 7 letters, we find that those fall on the 5th line, the 8th line, and the 11th line, which is as good as 112, right? So I found that to be pretty profound, and there was still a small voice saying, oh, but there's more. So I dug deeper. With the emphasis of 777, it stood out to me that 22 would be 7 divided by 22 is 3.14, echoing the first folio. But I was looking for more. I wanted to find a confirmation that there was an understanding of the 60 circuit wheel. And look what I found. When we skip the single digit lines, look what we can compare as a match. Now remember, any 3-digit number in any order is the same frequency and value in this system, as well as if a number is off by 1, it is considered to be the same. So let's say if you have 146, it could be considered as 147 as well. So 187 is just out of order a little bit, and 853 is in exact order. It's also interesting to see that each of those little groupings that match are essentially 88. 1 plus 7 is 8, and then the additional 8 on the first grouping, and the second grouping, 3 plus 5 is 8, along with the additional 8. So that matches the number of characters in the whole cover page. All right, so these are the kinds of things that I'm looking at and trying to see if there is a correlation to the 60 circuit wheel or the 24 circuit wheel. And there are some that are very close, but I knew that there was something to be discovered that was more exact, and so I kept looking. But here's an example of what I'm talking about. Pulling out all the capitals, running the values across, and comparing the numbers. There are some that are close. The top right, you can see the 918189, which is one of the key codes that are also very significant that show up. 991 is there by the 0, omitting the 0. The very bottom we have 462, and the pentagram codes on the left, the 5 points, have 3 of the numbers, 3 out of 5. At any rate, you'll be really astonished when we get to the point where I'm going to reveal the full enchilada. So in light of making things digestible, we're going to conclude this first episode, and thank you so much. Many blessings.